Hi everyone, we are from Group 9. So in this presentation, we will explore the evolution of Keynesian economics through the contributions of two key figures, which are Alvin H. Hansen and Paul A. Samuelson, who played crucial roles in shaping and spreading Keynesian thought. We will then examine how Keynesian ideas evolve over time by looking at two significant branches, the post-Keynesian school and the new Keynesian school. Together, these perspectives highlight the lasting influence and adaptation of Keynesian economics in modern economic theory.
This is Alvin H. Hansen. He was born in Viborg, South Dakota. He studied at Yankton College and later got his PhD from the University of Wisconsin in 1918. Hansen taught at Brown University and the University of Minnesota. He became well known after published his book Business Cycle Theory in 1927. He was an important scholar in the field of macroeconomics. This slide highlights the key contribution of Alvin H. Hansen to Keynesian economics. The person who first did not agree with Keynes but later support his ideas after studying them more. He conducted fiscal policy seminar at Harvard, focusing on Keynesian principle and policy application. He also authored Fiscal Policy and Business Cycle in 1941, emphasizing the importance of government intervention to stabilize the economy. Their dedication earned him the nickname the American Keynes. This contribution underlined the role of government-led stabilization in Keynesian economics. Alvin Hansen was a key supporter of Keynesian economics in the US. He taught at Harvard and ran the Fiscal Policy Seminar, spreading Keynes' idea. He was called the American Keynes because he strongly supported government action to reduce unemployment. His work helped make Keynesian economics a major part of US policy discussion. Hansen believed government intervention was necessary to prevent economic downturns. In his 1988 Full Recovery or Stagnation, Hansen gave a warning that weak investment can harm the economy. He blamed this on slow population growth, fewer new industry, and less innovation. To fix this, he suggests government spending to keep jobs and avoid long-term stagnation. Hansen's thesis introduced the idea of secular stagnation, which became a key topic in economic studies. His idea influenced policymakers to use government spending during economic slowdowns. Hansen worked with John Hicks to build the ISLM model, which explains how the economy works. The model connects the good market, which is IS curve, and the money market, which is LM curve. It shows how government spending and monetary policy can change the economy and reach balance. This model became a basic tool in macroeconomic analysis. It helped economists and policymakers understand the effect of fiscal and monetary policy.
Paul A. Samuelson was the first American economist awarded the Nobel Prize in 1970. recognized widely for his profound influence on economic theory and education. Born in Gary, Indiana, to Polish immigrant parents, he excelled in mathematics and economics, studying at the University of Chicago and Harvard. Despite Harvard not appointing him, he began his influential career at MIT, publishing groundbreaking research and widely used textbooks called economics. Samuelson's work bridged theory and teaching, shaping generations of economists and students worldwide. His innovative approach applied rigorous mathematics to economics, formalizing concepts that transformed the field. Samuelson's contributions to economic theory. So, in terms of mathematical economics, Samuelson applied advanced mathematics to clarify economic theory, formalizing propositions and expanding theoretical frameworks. In terms of diverse research topics, his work covered consumer behavior, capital growth, welfare economics, fiscal policy, and more, reflecting his broad expertise. Generalist approach. Rather than focusing on empirical testing, Samuelson emphasized expanding economic theory through mathematical rigor. The multiplier accelerator interaction. Multiplier principle. Originating from Kant and Keynes, it explains how initial spending leads to greater overall income changes. Acceleration principle. Describe how changes in consumer demand amplify investment fluctuation in capital goods. Lastly, the interaction become the key foundation of business cycle theory. So now, I'm going to explain about the multiplier accelerator interaction. So by substituting the consumption function and investment function into the basic Keynesian identity and manipulate the terms, we are able to derive the following complex income determination equation as stated. This equation is not as imposing as it first looks. Total income depends on aggregate spending, which in turn consists of two parts, that which does not depend on the level of income and that which does. The autonomous spending is captured by the terms in parentheses. The two negative terms simply subtract items, tax and import spending, that do not contribute directly to demand for domestically produced goods. To repeat, the items within the parentheses sum to the total autonomous spending in the economy. To conclude, national income rises through the multiplier effects. It is possible to explain turning points in a business cycle without resorting to special explanations. The pre-Keynesian theory of acceleration gave an exaggerated picture of an instability in the economy. The combination of the multiplier and the accelerator, which seems to be capable of producing cyclical fluctuations.
So I will continue to the next part, which is post-Keynesian. What is post-Keynesian? Post-Keynesian economy emerged as a direct reaction to neoclassical synthesis that attempted to combine Keynesian macroeconomics with neoclassical microeconomics after the Second World War. Although mainstream economists such as Paul Samuelson and Alvin Hansen considered Keynes' ideas to be only a short-term solution to the market imperfection, but post-Keynesian argued that this combination had actually distorted Keynes' revolutionary thinking about the inherent instability of capitalism and the role of uncertainty. So the future is uncertain and cannot be calculated with ordinary probability, because many of the post-Keynesian drew heavily on the work of Polish economist Michael Kalecki, who had offered a Keynesian-like theory of total employment prior to the general theory. Moving on to the next, which is key features of post-Keynesian. First, fundamental uncertainty. For example, investors cannot accurately predict what will happen to the economy or stock market in the future. For instance, the 2008 global financial crisis occurred suddenly when the confidence of investors and financial institutions changed drastically, leading to market crashes and bank failures. In the real world, investment decisions depend on the expectation that can shift rapidly. The future cannot be forecasted statically like rolling dice or roulettes. And second, rejection of equilibrium models. For example, after the 2000 debt crisis, Greece's economy remained in a state of high unemployment and recession for years without automatically recovering to full employment. because the market failed to correct itself over a prolonged period. This showed the post-Keynesians argued that markets do not necessarily move toward equilibrium. Economy can get stuck in the crisis or high unemployment without any automatic corrections mechanism. So the third one is the role of financial and credit institution. For example, the 2008 financial crisis happened when banks and financial institutions issued massive amounts of the loan, subprime mortgage, which eventually led to the collapse of the global financial system when debts could not be repaid. So bank and credit institutions are not just neutral intermediaries but are key drivers of the economy. Credit can accelerate growth, but it can also trigger financial crisis if left unchecked. And the third is aggregate demand in the long term. In contrast to neoclassical theory, which emphasizes supply-side factors in the long run, but post-Keynesian argue that aggregate demand is the primary determinant of economic growth and employment, both in the short and long term. If demand is weak, the economy can experience prolonged slow growth or high unemployment. Nevertheless, we can discern several basic tenets of this set of ideas. The first one is neo-Ricardian view of production, value, and distribution, and second one is markup pricing, and the third is endogenous money. Next is pronounced cyclical instability, and the last is need for an income policy. The first one is neo-Ricardian view of production, value, and distribution. The neo-Ricardian approach, rooted in the work of David Ricardo and extended by Piero Starfa, fundamentally rethinks how value and income are determined in an economy. Unlike neoclassical economics, which center on marginal productivity and supply-demand equilibrium, Neo-Ricardianism emphasizes the technical and social condition of production and the distribution of the social surplus among classes. They analyze how production, value, and income distribution are determined by social and institutional factors, not just market forces. They also emphasize the importance of class relation, which is workers versus capitalists, and how profit and wages are set in the economy. They also emphasizes that the distribution of income, wages, profit, and rents among social classes is central to the economic analysis. It focuses on how production processes and institutional arrangement determine the distribution of value and income rather than relying solely on marginal productivity or market equilibrium. John Robinson and other post-Keynesians expanded Strauss's unconventional themes. The actual distribution of income between wages and profit will depend on the class struggle, public policies that alter the distribution, and rate of investment. Robinson argued that it is desirable and possible for society to control the distribution of income. This can be done through the socialization of investment, public ownership of the means of production, or income policy, which is government policies to control wages and prices. Robinson also believed these policies are firmly rooted in the proper interpretation of Keynes' book, which is the general theory, and she also called herself a left-wing Keynesian. The second one is markup pricing. Unlike the neoclassical idea that prices are set by supply and demand in perfectly competitive market, post-Keynesians argue that firms often set prices by adding a markup over their average cost, especially in oligopolistic cooperation, which is market dominated by a few large sellers rather than through the impersonal forces of supply and demand to achieve desired profit levels. This markup approach is particularly evident in concentrated industries where a few large firms dominate the market. Prices do not reflect current demand condition, rather they reflect the fund requirements for the planned investment expenditure the firm considers necessary if it is to adjust its capacity sufficiently to meet expected future demand. When input costs rise, firms typically increase their price proportionally to maintain their markup percentages, preserving profit margins. The third is endogenous money. Unlike neoclassical economics, particularly monetarism, which treats money as exogenously controlled by central bank, post-Keynesianism believes that money is endogenous because created within the economy by the banking system through lending, rather than being fixed by the central bank. When banks issue loans, they create new money, which means the supply of money responds to the needs of the economy, not the other way around. So Keynes himself pointed out that money comes into existence along with debts. This challenged the traditional view of money as exogenously controlled. So inflation arises from the fight over the shares of the distribution of income, which increases in economy because production costs to rise, creating a greater demand on the part of firms for working capital to finance their more expensive goods in progress and inventories. Business approach bank for additional loans, and bank extend these loans, creating new deposit in the process. As stated in the search results, business borrowing rises and the money stock increases. So this process demonstrates how real economic factors, which increases trigger financial responses, increase borrowing that expand the money supply endogenously. Next is pronounced cyclical instability. Post-Keynesians believe that capitalist economies are inherently unstable, experiencing cycles of boom and bust due to fluctuations in investment, credits, and expectations. So financial market and banking behavior can amplify these cycles, leading to periods of rapid growth followed by recessions or crises. So economies are inherently unstable. When investment more than required to maintain the steady rate of growth, the economy will increases and unemployment decreases. But when investment less than required to maintain the steady rate of growth, the economy will decreases and unemployment will rises. The last one is need for an incomes policy. According to post-Keynesian, the class struggle for income shares and the markup pricing by oligopolies necessitate a permanent incomes policy. Post-Keynesian advocate for government intervention to manage wage and price growth, reduce inequality, and stabilize the economy. Income policy refers to coordinated effort to align wage increases with productivity growth and prevent excessive inflation. So inflation cannot be controlled through conventional instruments of fiscal and monetary policy. The conventional policy instruments, by curtailing the level of economic activity, simply reduce the amount of income and output available for distributions, thereby heightening the social conflict underlying the inflationary process. Next, the successful incomes policy can hold down inflation, minimize the redistribution of incomes from inflation, and avoid the loss of output associated with anti-inflationary fiscal and monetary policies. Post-Keynesian is also called as heterodox economics. What is heterodox economics? Heterodox economics is a flow of thought that is not included in the mainstream economics. Heterodox economics refer to economic theories and approaches that challenge or differ from mainstream, just neoclassical economics. It is an umbrella term for schools of thought that reject core assumptions of orthodox economics, such as perfect competition, rational expectations, market equilibrium tendency, neutrality of money, individual utility maximization. Post-Keynesian has many weaknesses in terms of methodology used, where the methodology and economics model used are different from the mainstream thinking that they take in complexity in the real world of their analysis. They also do not have an agreed economic model which combines all the models presented. Some policies are difficult to implement. The research by modern post-Keynesian scholars can be found in the Journal of Post-Keynesian Economics.
Hi everyone, this is the part of the new Keynesian. For your guys' information, a new Keynesian is an economy that built on the traditional idea but adapt them into the modern economy. A key insight is that the price and the wages are the sticky. It means that the price and the wage didn't adjust easily to change in the supply and demand. This stickiness can lead to involuntary unemployment and means that monetary policy has a major influence on the economy. From the 1990s and until the 2008 financial crisis, the new Keynesian economy was the dominant framework in academic macroeconomy that shaping how policymakers and economists understand recession, inflation, and the central bank actions. Okay guys, the next thing is about the most important issue in the part is the downward price and the wage inflexibility. For your guys' information, current new economies focus more on the targeted post-Keynesian, who explore deeper the structural causes of depression and the post-Keynesian that drop in AD due to the downward price and wage lead to the recession and the rising unemployment. New Keynesian accept the natural rate of unemployment and acknowledge that even with the rational expectation, economy does not always reach equilibrium. Why? It's because the imperfect of competition that influence the sticky price and wage and also the pro-market coordination. Meanwhile, the new classical economy assumes that the perfect price flexibility will push the economy toward to the natural rate via the Phillips curves, but the new Keynesian perceive the real world friction that prevent the ideal adjustment. Now let us take an example of these issues. As we can see, when the AG fall from the AD1 to the AD2, the economy moved from the full employment to the recessions, which represent the point A to the point B, and also the price dropped from the P1 to P2, and the output also dropped from the QF to the Q1, and the result is the unemployment rate rises. In theory, the economy will correct by themselves. If nominal wage fell and the real wage will stay stable, it will shift the AS curve to the right and restoring the full employment. But the new Keynesians argue that WMP are downward rigid, which means the worker resist to pay the cut and the firms hesitate to slash the price. Without the government intervention, like fiscal or monetary policy, the economy may start in a recession. The next is about the reason why the price and the wages does not easily fall during the downturn. One of the reasons is the manual cost. What is manual cost? Manual cost actually is a hidden expenses that firms will face during adjusting their price. For example, like reprinting their menu, updating the catalog, or redoing the advertisement, and so on. Even small costs like this will influence the small firm to freeze their costs instead of chasing the lower demand. and the result is that this will cause the short run stickiness. Even if the firm cut the price of product, could boost the sale of the firm. In hints, the menu cost explain why market does not self-correct instantly. It's because it will leaving room for the recession to persist. For new Keynesians, this justified short-term government intervention to revive the demand when the price fell to adjust by themselves. The next reason is the insider and outsider theory. Insider is referred to the people who have job in the institution, that they have power to block the wage cut through the union or seniority, and the outsider means the people who does not have job, that they cannot simply underbid them for job due to the institutional barrier like the minimum wage or social resistance. As a result, this creates the short run downward wage rigidity, and the wage stay high despite of joblessness, that leaving the outsider trapped into the cyclical unemployment until the demand recover. In hence, it's not just about the contract, it's about the power dynamic. They reinforce that the new Keynesian call for the policy intervention when the market failed to adjust the price. Next is about the formal and implicit contract. The formal union contract explicitly forbid the wage cuts, and it forcing firms to lay off the worker instead when the demand are down and fall. But even without the union, the invisible handshake created rigidity, and it influenced the firm to maintain the wage to attract the quality talent worker and to reduce the turnover, where workers accept the recessionary layoff in exchange for the stable paychecks. This dual rigidity from the both paper contract and the social bargains will explain why the recession typically bring the jobless but not the wage cuts, because the economy will shift from the full employment to the underemployment through the layoff but not the pay adjustment. Last but not least is about the efficiency wage. In a general question, why do the firm willing to pay above the market wage during the recession? This is because the efficiency wage revealed that the parity will make the business sense. The reason why company maintain the high wage is to boost the productivity through the worker effort and reality, and also to reduce the costly and reduce the retraining, and the last thing is minimize the supervision that needed by remotivation and self-discipline. From their side, the cutting the wage is a backfire because it will increase the shocking and encourage the quick job and lower productivity so much that per unit labor cost actually is increased. And the final thing is this create the powerful asymmetry because the firm would rather lay off the worker than the cut wage. When demand fell, the reason is not the wage reduction but is the job losses. And this explaining why unemployment spike persists during the downturn.
To conclude, Keynesian economics highlight the important role of government intervention in managing the economy. It teaches us that aggregate demand drives economic performance, especially during downturns. By using tools like fiscal and monetary policy, government can help reduce employment and support growth. Although developed many decades ago, Keynesian ideas remain highly relevant today in addressing modern economic challenges like recession and financial crisis.